Well, welcome everyone. I always feel like it's a minor miracle that people gather on a Friday evening to practice this, what we call in the early Buddhist tradition, the heart's deliverance of goodwill, or the heart's deliverance of loving kindness. And I like to think about it as, in a way, the most available source of happiness for us human beings. I mean, there's a few things that kind of we can count on. A good sleep, a nice bath. But more satisfying than our sort of ordinary go-to sense experiences is this turning the mind to this attitude of loving kindness. And one of the things we learn when we study, when we get interested in our own heart and mind, is that the attitude is always in play. We never have to be, just feeling like we're stuck being grumpy or being irritable. I mean, it's clear that we are going to be irritable or grumpy or resentful or closed down or, caught up in any number of less than skillful attitudes, states of mind. But the appropriate way for us to relate to those times of difficulty is this, and it's optional. I don't know, we may not have the skillful means or the confidence in any moment to sort of shift one's attitude. But even if we're stuck, it's still useful to realize, I'm stuck, but I know one thing, it doesn't have to be this way. It is this way. If I knew how to shift my attitude, if I had the right amount of confidence, if I had the right skillful means, definitely I'd shift this attitude. But right now I'm not doing it. I can't do it or don't know how to do it. But I'm still in the game because at least I realize, I acknowledge this unhelpful attitude, being aversive, is not the only way to be in this moment, the only way to be relating in this moment. Joseph Goldstein, one of my teachers, in one of his earlier books, Seeking the Heart of Wisdom, it's a book he wrote with Jack Kornfield several decades, maybe even 30 years ago or more. And he wrote, seeing the suffering in the world around us and in our own bodies and minds, we begin to understand suffering not only as an individual problem, but as a universal experience. It is one of the aspects of being alive. The question then comes to mind is, if compassion arises from the awareness of suffering, why isn't the world a more compassionate place? Right? Because we talk about that, that compassion arises because of the wise heart's proximity to suffering. And so he goes on, he answers his own question, if the proximate cause for compassion is the exposure to suffering, why isn't there more compassion in the world? He answers that the problem is that often our hearts are not open to feel the pain. We move away from it, close off, and become defended. By closing ourselves off from suffering, however, we also close ourselves off to our own wellspring of compassion. And this is the thing about life and our practice generally. It really comes down, some moments are easier than others, but it always comes down to the same thing. Is it appropriate? Is it skillful? Is it possible in this moment to be open? Or am I, one way or another, rationalizing being closed? And another teacher, Tony Packer, said something I really like, that nobody ever consciously chooses to be numb or disconnected or closed down. We do it all the time, but we don't choose to close down, to disconnect in the light of day. We do it out of habit. We do it unconsciously. And there are real repercussions, when we close down and we separate, because then we feel disconnected. And because we're disconnected, we're likely to make some attempt to address the pain of being disconnected in ways that can further that disconnection, that alienation. So in a moment when we start doing the metta, the loving kindness practice, it's really about shifting the allegiance or the kind of gravitational pull of our heart from this self-centered, what about me, protecting me, getting myself away from the uncertainty and the messiness of life, getting myself away from the exposure of suffering, to a different, like an attitude of giving, of including that generosity of the heart, the generosity of goodness. And so we'll lose it, but we can, there's a lot of artistry in metta, loving kindness practice. We have to find our own, specific to the makeup, the qualities, the tendencies of our own heart. We have to find our own way to find our way back to that generosity of the heart, the heart that cares, the heart that's willing to include, the heart that's willing to be touched, the heart that's not afraid of exposure. We have to find our way back. And we have these clues, like we know it's about inclusiveness, saying yes. It's not about me rushing away from my negative, aversive, self-centered states into the glorious space of loving kindness. It's really about acknowledging the messy, unwholesome, self-centered, negative states of mind with love, with kindness, with patience, with forgiveness, with a wholesome sense of humor, right? That's how we come back. That's how we start over when we're doing loving kindness practice. We manifest a non-fear of any kind of reactivity, any kind of giving up, any kind of doubt, and just like we practice including that, having metta, having loving kindness for the resistance that, and the way my mind resists, the way my mind disconnects from the moment may be slightly or very different than the way your mind loses the thread of loving kindness, gets caught up in some negativity. But regardless, however we end up, identified, acting out some negative attitude of mind, the way back is simply to have metta, loving kindness, for that negative attitude of mind. We don't need a different moment's experience. Just right there and then, that intimate, honest acknowledgement, oh, my mind's really negative, or I'm having a lot of doubt, thinking that this is stupid, I shouldn't have come, or whatever thought, attitude shows up. The way back to the practice is just to realize, oh, I care about this. I care enough to be close. I care enough to just acknowledge what it feels like to be human right now, to feel this body, to feel the quality of the heart. I care enough to wish well for myself and to wish well for everyone. May our hearts be at ease. And that's the great thing. So never get confused by that very common tendency to think, oh, I've gotten myself in a heap of trouble. I'm caught up with this negative thoughts, and I got to get myself back to my practice, which is way over there somewhere, because I'm over in this negative territory. So even that first movement of just acknowledging the negative territory, the unwholesome attitudes that have gotten established, the momentum of whatever it is the mind's been spinning with, just to sort of relax is already the beginning of loving kindness. Like, it's as if we're talking to the negative states, negative qualities in the mind. Honey, I'm not afraid of you. I see you. I get it. I understand that sometimes my mind is like this. Sometimes my heart is closed down like this. Sometimes, what do we say sometimes? Sometimes my mind is fit to be tied, you know? Sometimes it's like this. That's already has the flavor of metta, loving kindness. So I thought it would be useful as we practice for, 30 or 40 minutes now, to be particularly interested in those times where we lose the thread, the continuity of loving kindness practice. And I'll give some instructions as we're going. And just to, in that moment where you realize, like when we're really lost, we're lost, we can't practice. But in that moment, you realize that the mind has been spinning in some self-centered drama, then it's almost like the first thing we want to remember is, I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to fix anything. I just need to realize that even this can be okay. This, whatever the mind is like right now, the reverberations of having been caught up in some drama, that even this is okay. Like I can have metta for this. This would be fine to have metta for. Oh yes, sometimes the heart, the mind and body are like this. And I care about this. I care enough to not have to back away, to rush away. I care enough to simply feel what's here to feel. And I care enough to wish well for myself. May I be at ease with these conditions. May I have a healthy, happy, kind attitude about the way it is right now. May not be afraid of the way the mind is right now. May have a lot of space, a lot of ease. So you can use phrases like that, like literally we talk to ourselves when we need that more support, that sort of stronger support to keep the metta, that goodness in mind. Then use phrases as if you're literally talking to yourself, but from this attitude, this inclusive attitude of metta, loving kindness. Okay, so that's a particular challenge for tonight. And so we'll get comfortable in our posture. It's nice to be relatively relaxed when we're doing the loving kindness practice. Like we actually belong in this body at this time and place. That we actually belong in this wild, messy, beautiful, horrible world. The whole wonderful catastrophe of it all. And a nice way to begin is just to be willing to grow roots into this world of ours, into this body of ours. Not to be afraid to be sensitive, not to be afraid to be feeling what we're feeling. And to begin our practice tonight, let's do a simple loving kindness body scan. And you can practice with your eyes closed or open, whatever you like. Holding the body relatively still in a comfortable enough posture. We let the attention soak into the head and the face. And we can start simply by feeling the scalp, even the weight of the hair, or just the qualities along the top of the head, sides and back of the head. Feel the vibration, maybe, any pressure, any weight. And just be relating to the top of the head in a kind way. as if we were to say something like, honey, I'm willing to feel you. I'm willing to be with you. Sure, I often ignore you, but right now you have my full attention. And I'm going to be with you, top of the head. And I'm going to love you, care for you in these moments. Shine the light of awareness, the warm light of metta in the ears and into the brow and forehead, letting this radiance of goodness, of metta, this loving presence, feel both eyes and the brow and the forehead and the temples. And we're not trying to get rid of the tension you might feel. We're just trying to be close and loving and patient. This loving presence. And when you feel ready, just include more and more of the face. Feel the air touching the skin. Feel the moisture in the mouth. The strong muscles of the jaw. The hardness of the teeth and the bones. The softness of the lips and tongue. And in the most simple way, this inclusive and kind presence for the entire head and face. And not in a hurry. As if we have all the time in the world to be present in this way. And not afraid of any discomfort there may be in the head or face. Everything belongs. Nothing needs to remain hidden. And we allow the awareness to settle and soak into the throat and the entire neck. And just take your time. See what sensations are here and be welcoming. This willingness to be close and a willingness to allow the sensations to be the way they are. It's really a practice of non-fear with the sensations in the neck and throat. And from the sides of the neck, with real loving interest, we feel the tops of the shoulders and the short shoulder joints. And if there's some tension, for example, along the top of the shoulders, we're willing to be close, not in order to make it go away, but because we care. And we want to include and allow and forgive and be patient with. And if you need like support, you could just repeat the phrase, I just want to be close. I just want to feel what's here to feel. So this is what kindness looks like when we're doing a body scan. Just that simple willingness to include and to feel what's there to feel, to not be in a rush all the time in the world as we feel the top of the shoulders. And both arms, both hands, take your time. You might just feel into each place, like the biceps, underarms, elbows, forearms, wrists, feeling the back of the hands, feeling the relative warmth of the palms, any touch points, feeling all the fingers, and both arms, both hands together, just alive with sensation, not afraid to be close, to wish well for the arms and hands. May you be at ease. May the arms and hands be at ease. And just feel the goodness and the healing of this presence. It's truly a good thing, being present in this wise and kind way. And we'll take our time. We're just going to move down the torso. So the upper chest and upper back, collarbones, upper rib cage. All the time in the world to simply feel whatever's here to feel. And if it's subtle, if it's somewhat nondescript, that's okay. Just feel that, be close to that. We're just simply offering this gift of a kind, clear presence. We feel the breastbone, the mid-chest, the shoulder blades, and any movement in the chest, like a little vibration from the beating of the heart or the movement of the lungs. Any emotional qualities deep in the heart area. And just giving permission for everything to be the way it is in the chest, in the heart, shoulder blades. And when you feel ready, dropping down into the solar plexus and the lower ribs and the kidneys. And again, we're just feeling and including this wise and loving presence here. And into the abdomen, all the digestive organs and the lower back. All the way into the pelvis, we feel the structure of the pelvis, the hips, tailbone, sits bones, floor, the pelvis, groin. Just this wise and kind presence, this inclusive, curious presence. In the entire torso, both arms and hands, the neck, the entire head, the upper half of the body, holding, meeting it in this inclusive, kind way. Everything belongs. Nothing has to be left out. And when you're ready, just begin bringing this kind and inclusive attention down into the thighs. So from the pelvis and buttocks into the thighs, any touch points, even the clothes against the skin that you feel. And this kind, open-hearted, generous attention to the knees. Just as they are, like a gift, this gift of this steady presence. And the shins and the calves. This loving presence down the legs, through the ankles, all the way to the heels. Even those places that are mostly nondescript, still bring that loving sensitivity, even when the sensations are subtle. The sides, tops, and bottoms of the feet, toes. I just feel the vibration of this loving presence through both legs and both feet. Everything's included here in the lower half of the body. Nothing left out. This generous and patient presence. And the whole body together. Outer, inner, front, behind, sides, top and bottom. So in a way, we're infusing the body with this goodness, this loving presence, this inclusive and generous, even radiant presence. And maybe the body responds as if each cell smiles, happy to be in this loving presence. And just abiding, trusting the goodness here, holding, being with the body in this loving way. No aversion, no fear, no disconnection. And as best you can, sense the goodness, this capacity to be relating to the felt sense of the body in this generous and kind way. And may this goodness continue and increase and never end. And we can even sense the goodness of the heart that cares about the body, cares enough to be close, cares enough to wish well. May this body be happy, safe in all ways. May this body be at ease, happy and at ease, no matter the conditions. May this body be happy and at ease. And just see if you can keep this metta, this loving kindness, in mind, and to begin again whenever it gets interrupted. And you might feel like your practice needs the support of bringing to mind initially people who are easy to love, people who've really been there for you in your life, benefactors or mentors or dear friends. So then, of course, just bring those people to mind and notice how the heart naturally opens. You just feel that generosity to the heart moving out, including them, wishing well. May you be at ease. May you be safe in all ways. May you be at ease no matter the conditions in your life. But if the quality of metta is strong enough, clear enough, then just notice its boundless, inclusive nature. It already includes everybody, everything. Nothing is outside its radiance, and we just learn to trust that and abide in metta. So it's not so much you doing metta, loving kindness practice, but just trusting and abiding, being metta in a way. So we'll continue in silence. Find the supports you need to keep it in mind. And when you don't need those phrases or mental images, then do what's so simple, just abiding in the goodness of the heart that loves, that wishes well, that includes, that's naturally generous. May this goodness continue, increase, and never end. So let's continue in silence. And let's remember to be interested in these moments of starting again when we wake up from having been lost in thought. And just realizing, like, what is the way back to a loving, generous attitude? We're really not that far away from the realization that I care about this life. I care enough to be willing to simply feel what's here to feel. And I care enough to wish well. May this heart be at ease. May all beings be at ease. And then again, learning that we can abide in that goodness. We can really trust it and relax. And in a sense, really be this radiant, loving, inclusive presence. The art of metta practice is simply keeping this attitude, this generous attitude in mind. And ultimately, we want to go from practicing metta to being love, being metta, abiding with this generosity of the heart that's open and inclusive, that's not afraid, naturally generous. So for the last few minutes, maybe you want to practice with your eyes open. You don't have to look at the computer screen, but just the sense of the space around you, the world around you, all the relationships of your life, the messiness of your relationships to yourself, to your friends and family, and the wider world. And realizing that this goodness of the heart, that it's not afraid, doesn't need to be afraid of the complexity of our relationships with the wider world. May all beings, this being right here, this sensitive heart right here, may all sensitive hearts, all beings be at ease, no matter the conditions. May all beings be at ease. May wisdom and love protect us always. May we all be at ease in this messy, wild, imperfect world. And may the goodness of love continue, increase, and never end. May the goodness of love continue, increase, and never end. And as we finish up our formal practice, start to move our bodies, you might find it useful just to check on the confidence. Like maybe it's possible for me to live with this attitude all day long, whatever I have to do, whomever I have to be around. May this goodness continue, may it increase, may it never end. So just holding that possibility. And as we have our time for discussion coming up, even in the sort of strangeness of the Zoom world, we can just see, well, what does maintaining or developing, beginning again, this attitude, this generous, open, inclusive attitude, what is it like when we're having a conversation together? And what gets in the way? And then when I notice what gets in the way, how to let that just be the next thing. Oh, I care about that too. So because I'm recording this right on our live stream, YouTube live stream channel, I've had a spotlight myself, but you can always select the gallery view in your upper right if you want to see everyone. And as you know, this is a great time just to, I often say, we've been living many years, some of us, and we've learned a thing or two about love and the functionality of that goodness of the heart and what gets in the way. So this is a time just to share your own learnings with the group. It's also a good time to check in about the practice and to clarify any practice questions you have. One of the things I've put into the chat, I'll do it again in case you didn't get it, but besides the information about supporting the center, there's also a handout that just outlines these 4 steps, how to arouse loving kindness, or just the importance of creatively arousing it, how to sense that generosity once that goodness of metta is aroused, like it has that inclusive or generous quality, how to experience the boundlessness so that there are no boundaries to where that goodness can go, and how to, in a sense, relax back and trust and abide in metta. And I like to think of that as the 4 stages. That's somewhat how one of my important teachers, Venerable Analio, talks about loving kindness practice in those 4 ways. And I've kind of adopted it. It seems like a good way to arouse, to sense the generosity, the inclusivity of that metta, to notice its boundless quality, that nothing needs to be left out, we don't have to throw anything out of our heart, and to abide. So to stop thinking that I have to do the metta, but just to realize it's here, and I can, relax with it, be the love, the radiance of goodness, not feel compelled to do it. It's already here, that inclusive. Because, the thing about metta, the way it's talked about in the tradition, it's much more about the absence of fear and aversion, as opposed to like something that I have to generate. It's really more what we're doing is finding ways to abandon the hatred, the fear, the negativity. And what's left is that wide, open, inclusive, generous quality that we might call love or metta. So I'll turn it over to all of you. Be nice to hear from some of you. You can either raise your digital hand, or if you don't know how to do that, just unmute yourself, introduce yourself, maybe with your first name. You can share your pronouns so we don't accidentally misgender anybody. Anybody feel like beginning the conversation? What have you been learning? What did you learn tonight?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny.
Hi. I live in St. Paul, and I use she, her pronouns. And I came in a little
Jenny,
late.
did you want to say something?
Yeah. Can you not hear me? Oh, that's really odd. Yeah, some people can hear me. Can you hear me, Mark?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't have my speakers on, so I didn't hear you, Jenny.
Okay.
I hear you now, but I didn't hear you the last 20 seconds or so.
Okay, I was just saying that I came in a little late, and so I missed the beginning of your talk. But just now, you mentioned about doing this practice is a way to reduce or eliminate fear. And I think that's really fascinating, because just last night I was on a meditation app, and the meditation that I listened to was about reducing fear. And that is the first time I think I've heard that expressed. So it's really, really interesting to me that what we're doing right now. So would you say that metta practice, that is one of the things that occurs?
Yeah, and the way it's described in the early Buddhist tradition is they just literally don't fit into the same heart at the same time. Fear or hate, any expression of aversion, and metta. It's like in any one moment of the mind, you can't have both coexisting, because there's sort of different expressions of the mind. The mind that's closed and tight because of some fear or hate or negativity, as soon as metta enters the mind, as soon as I have some metta for the hate or for the fear, that more generous, inclusive, oh, honey, you're afraid, that's no longer fear. Like the loving attention to the fear isn't the mind caught in fear. The fear is in a sense there, but what's really there is the heart that knows how to see it and feel it. Oh, honey, you're afraid, and I care about this. I care enough to be honest about it, that there's fear. I care enough to be willing to feel, like that quote I read from Joseph Goldstein, where he says, like, if the proximate cause for compassion is exposure to suffering, why don't we have a more compassionate world? And remember, his response was, the problem is, I'm just reading now, the problem is that often our hearts are not open to feel the pain. And that's the deal, is we have to be willing to feel the pain of the fear, because that's what compassion and love does. It's like when the love is strong, then it's like, I care enough to be willing to feel what it feels like to be afraid. I'm not afraid to feel what it feels like to be afraid, because that feeling of fear is unpleasant. But love has the stability, compassion has the stability, the confidence. I'm not afraid to feel this. In the same way, like if you go see, the more classic example of compassion is going to see a dear one who's suffering or dying or something in the hospital. And if you're really afraid of their suffering, you're not being compassionate. I mean, it's totally understandable that we might be afraid of it. But real compassion is like, I see you're really hurting. I see that you're really afraid. And I'm not afraid that you're really afraid. Because I have, in this moment at least, I have a love that knows how to hold your fear, to hold your upset. Just like, the classic example would be a mother or a grandmother with a child that's really tantruming or really upset. It's like a wise parent, a wise grandparent, they're not afraid of the kid freaking out, screaming, yelling. Oh, honey, it's not easy being a human being sometimes. Or, you wouldn't say that to a kid, but that would be the spirit, like, yeah, this is what kids do. They freak out sometimes. And I get it. And I'm not going to abandon you because you're loud and screaming and hitting and whatever kids do when they're tantruming, I get it. And I'm not going to throw you out of my heart. Yeah, Jenny, any other thoughts about that?
No, I just am so surprised that it was such a new concept and that here it is coming up again. And I think, as I recalled, it was about as soon as you recognize you're afraid, which is kind of, and that then that it's the recognition, and that's kind of what you're saying too. It's like when you recognize that the fear is there, you can have self-compassion.
Yeah, but you have to recognize it with metta, with that wisdom and love. Because remember, I could recognize the fear with aversion. Like, why am I afraid again? When am I going to be done with this fear? I'm tired of being afraid of everything. Get your act together, Mark, right? So it's like, it's being aware of it in a balanced, inclusive way, which is already the metta. Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah.
Yes, Sandy.
Yeah, I love this discussion too, because I feel that. They don't coexist. Like when we can really get in that meta space, I think somehow I found like my own pattern of fear. Like that does seem to be the last few years, I guess, just the default. And this practice, if you really take the time to get in the energy of the metta, there is that feeling of they're not coexisting. Like, oh, things have loosened. It's moved away, and the metta. And I was also going to say, and the metta is filling up that constriction is just sort of released, I guess, is how it feels for me. And it very much spills over into equanimity. Like it really belongs. Like it's not that I'm trying to push the fear away. It's really that I'm leaning into it almost. And then watching it change, the energy of it change. And it really, I like that expression of non-fear, because it's not like fear isn't going to come again, or those habits aren't going to come again. But as you start to recognize the space of metta, or I just recognize that space of non-fear too, more and more. I don't know if that makes sense, but a lot of words you were saying.
That's beautiful, Sandy. Go ahead. Did you have more to say?
No, just a lot of the phrasing you were using just feels familiar little by little to me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is surprising, just like you're saying. And you see, like from what Sandy was saying, it really shifts the mind's understanding about how to relate to defilements or any of those negative patterns that we have in our personality. Because we see, like, normally we relate to those habits, those negative, reactive habits that we all have, each of us in our own way, as like a weed that I gotta get in there and dig out. But it's understandable that we might have that understanding, but it's not quite right. The weeds in our personality, they're just things to love. Doesn't mean we don't want to weed them out, or it doesn't mean that they're not dangerous if we act out those unhealthy patterns, whatever it might be. Self-hatred might be somebody's unhealthy pattern, or being aggressive, or whatever it might be. But the deal is, the weeding out really is in that flip of just, I care about you. I see you. I sense how you got triggered. I see that you're unwholesome, that you're not helping, but it is the way that it is. So I'm going to transform you by being close to you and not afraid of you, and being willing to feel what it feels like. And that's not a negative state of mind. That's a beautiful, enlightened state of mind. To be not afraid of unwholesome tendencies is wisdom, not an unwholesome tendency. It's a little magic, or maybe a better word is alchemy, that something gets transformed by relating to it with kindness. Yeah. Thanks, Sandy. Looks like Lisa has some thoughts to share with the group.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lisa, she, her, and I'm in Berkeley, California. And I wanted to share something that was related to, very much related to the body scan that we did, which was something that I read from Sharon Salzberg recently, where she said that as you go down your body and you focus on an area, either an area that you are resistant to because it's hurt or injured or in pain, or it's a part of your body you just don't like, and you feel very resistant or aversive to that part of your body, that you say, may my stomach be happy, may it live with ease. I mean, that you're actually wishing each body part that kind of loving kindness wish. And I don't know, there's something about that, isolating each part like that really resonated for me, because I tend to sort of globalize everything, and oftentimes there's something smaller in there that's bothering me, but I'm not fully conscious of where that aversion's, where that's located. And so sometimes we don't even notice when parts of us are tense, and just sort of sending that part love is so powerful. So I wanted to thank you. I thought it was a wonderful session today.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. That's just really beautiful what you said. And these techniques, or whatever you want to call them, they're just ways to expose, just like you said, they expose these subtle habits, like where we bury pain and then it can't resolve because it's hidden, and it can be hidden in places of the body. So when we do, it might seem sort of sentimental or silly to someone to be moving systematically through the body and sending loving wishes, or wishes for healing, or wishes for ease to the different places of the body. But it really kind of interrupts. Like I encourage you, even if it seems silly or dumb, or you just don't want to do it anyway. Because what's the harm? You know what I mean? It's like, why is the mind resistant? Not that you have to do it every day, but from time to time. And it's a lot like, in the Visuddhimagga, the way that Sharon often teaches loving kindness practice, they have a whole way of doing it, where, you have your benefactor and yourself and your loved ones and acquaintances, neutral people, difficult people, all beings to the north, beings to the south, to the east, to the west, above, below, they have all these different beings and all these different directions. And the idea is to expose places where the heart is unconsciously closed off, where we've sort of buried some hidden pain or some unresolved pain. And so even though you may not be inclined to be systematic in these ways, whether it's with a body scan or with using different beings, there are reasons for these kind of practices. Basically, we're exposing to ourselves. We're using these sort of strange techniques, where we're being somewhat systematic in order to uncover what we're unlikely to uncover, see what we're not seeing. Oh, isn't that interesting? I don't want to bring that person to mind. Or isn't that interesting? I really don't know how to feel my belly. It's like, I can feel my jaw, I can feel my upper chest, but when I go to the abdomen, it's like Teflon. The awareness just slips somewhere else. It's like, well, that's interesting. And we really take it on as a project. You know what? I'm going to learn how to be present. Even if the sensations are initially completely nondescript or numb, that's something to feel. I'll feel that and see what's underneath that, and then what's underneath that. And boy, whole worlds can show up doing it that way. This is a nice thing to do before we go to bed, like when you're lying down, like you're already in bed, in your PJs, lying down, to do that metta body scan in your own particular way, the way you like to do it, but just to make sure that nothing's excluded, nothing's left out. And when you have the whole body, then it's so easy, like if you have a partner there in the room, to include them, pet, neighbors, and outward from there. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Welcome from Berkeley, my old hometown, or at least where I lived for a while.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts for the community?
Hi, Mark. This is Sheila, she, her. Mark, I use the phrases and I try to feel metta, but it's like, how do you generate it? Like, I don't really feel it. So yeah, that's really my question.
Yeah, and you might even, before you start using phrases, just work on that general category that we might call arousing metta. And in that place and practice, I mean, there is a strategy to just keep repeating the phrases, even if they don't mean much to us and it feels somewhat repetitive. There's some value just sticking with that. That's one strategy. But what I might recommend for you, Sheila, is to use some skillful thought. Like, you can even touch your heart while you do this and just wonder, sincerely wonder, have I noticed this heart's capacity to be loving? When have I noticed a very natural, uncontrived goodness? And then you might just see what comes to mind. Oh yeah, I was walking home yesterday and I saw the puppy in the yard and my heart was open. And just, oh yeah, that heart in that moment, for a moment, that was a pure goodness of heart. I didn't have any ill will towards that puppy, toward that bird, toward that kid across the street, toward my friend in this one moment. 2 moments before, I had some ill will. But in that moment, so basically what we're doing is we're using our lived experience and the memory of our lived experience to start building confidence. You know what? This heart is capable of being good. Good in a way that I'm not trying to get anything back. It's not like a business kind of goodness where I'll be good to you if you're good to me. It's just like pure generosity, that love that it could be just even talking to a clerk at a grocery store for 30 seconds. But it was like total generosity. I was having this nice exchange. It was beautiful. I didn't think I was going to get anything I could take home and be, like some solid payback for being good. No, it was just pure good. The more we remember those moments, then it just begs the question, well, what about now? Can that goodness be evoked now? Because the way back is the memory has a little bit of the goodness right now. When we truly remember a moment that our heart was open and in a good way, that goodness is right there in that moment of remembering it.
Okay.
And that's the transition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And I feel like, yeah, I do have a lot of those moments, with different people, including a store clerk, that you just chat with them, you become friendly with them. So I guess just remembering the memory of those times would be helpful.
And what it feels like ask, what is that feeling? Because you may be expecting it to be somehow more ornate than it actually is. Because, different people have different personalities. And for certain types, it has a very ordinary feel. Like the real feeling of metta is the absence of ill will, not some glorious, radiant flowering of the heart, but just like there's no ill will in this heart.
Okay.
And that's beautiful.
Okay. Yeah, in that case, I do feel it then.
I believe that, Sheila.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing with us. Do we have a little bit more time? Any other thoughts for the group? Other learnings you've had recently that you'd like to share, or questions that might be emerging?
I'd like to share. Thank you, Mark, and it's good to be here with you all. This willingness to be with pain, it feels like letting go of expectations, or the question, when is this fear going to go away? And really, it seems like this kind of sense of time, or projecting a fixing attitude, is just kind of, it brings the unknown that much closer, and kind of, yeah, like a pointing towards the truth. And so having this kind of like love for the truth, I don't know, it just feels like truth can feel like, well, conditions just move into conditions. I really don't have any control of that. And can that be okay? I don't know, things start to feel kind of like just moving, like conditions are just going to move into conditions. And I guess when doing metta, it's kind of like that shift of touching into the condition with this, like, I care feeling. It kind of feels a little selfless, because there isn't any projecting of, I'm doing this in order to get something. And it gets mysterious. I was with a long-term friend today, and he's been going through some heavy stuff, and I kind of got together on this kind of like surface level, like, I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to go see this movie, and but I just want to be with him because I know he's going through a lot. And we just started making some small jokes that turned into laughter, and then turned into like more laughter, into like crying laughter, to the point where I'm like, I gotta drive, like I'm wiping tears from my eyes, like, and it just felt kind of like this, I don't know, like some natural cathartic humor just like brought out the goodness, or got to something that maybe wasn't being acknowledged. That being unknown, but it did come out in a way that was just, and I'm wondering if that was maybe wholesome humor, or unintentional, not controlled humor. I don't know, but that's what happened. So yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I think that might, just shift what Cam was saying, how we go forward. Like, instead of, okay, after a session like we've just had, to say, make this resolve, okay, I'm going to be loving. That's the most important thing, or something like that. But it might be more useful instead to think, I'm going to really notice those moments where there really isn't any ill will, any negativity. And it might be like that moment that Cam described, in hindsight, reflecting back on it, because we can, even with our memory, we can have a pretty clear sense, the nature of the mind in that moment was pretty pure. There was very little, if any, ill will, any negativity. That was goodness. May that goodness continue. May it increase. May it never end. It's really important that we start noticing these moments when, that just the heart's capacity to be wide open and undefended, because those moments have a little wildness to them. It's like nobody's trying to keep themselves safe in some of those moments. And it can be kind of interesting, like even Sheila mentioned being with the cashier. And, it's one thing to have a friendly interaction, but it's another thing to have a friendly interaction and to notice that it's a friendly interaction. So it's not on autopilot. It's a ordinary, friendly, beautiful interaction, nothing special, but really pure in the sense no ill will, nobody trying to get anything from the interaction. And then you add to that wisdom and awareness that understands this is simple beauty in real time. So it's the same thing like, this is what we mean. Like if to whatever degree Cam in that moment of laughing with the friend, to whatever degree there was awareness, an uncontrived awareness of the quality of the heart in that moment, like that it was only good. There was no closed heartedness at all that was operating in the mind in that moment or those moments. Because that's what we want to see. It's like the realization or the insight is, oh, I didn't know this heart was capable of so much goodness, so much purity, so much openness, so much space of, freedom from ill will, from any kind of fear. So it's not just about a moment of non-fear, non-hate, it's realizing the moments of non-hate and non-fear. Because that leaves a real impression when we see the goodness. And not just see it here, but we also want to see it in others when they're in that place. Like, oh, that's beautiful. Any last thoughts for the group? Any other words, Cam?
No. Yeah, there feels, like the carrying capacity, it's expanding. So yeah, thank you.
I had one last thing I wanted to share. I'm Sally, and I'm located in Sarasota, Florida. And I worked with a client this afternoon. I'm a coach, and it just struck me when we were talking tonight about loving kindness and how difficult it is for some people. And I find more with men than women to turn it on themselves and to see themselves in that light of being loving toward themselves. I mean, this particular man he's in his 50s, and he has never, ever turned it around and been kind to himself. It's so unfamiliar to him to say something kind to himself. And so I guess what I'm thinking is that's probably very common, that we don't know we can probably say kind things to others, and yet we're not learning to do this for ourselves, and how important that is to teach our children, to teach everyone to say these kinds of things to ourselves too. I just want to mention that.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Mark, I'm really here for you. All right, so everyone, ready? You got to do it for yourself. And it's like Sally suggesting, why does that seem so weird that we would say to ourselves sincerely, hey, honey, I'm really here for you. You are just, speaking to ourselves, I am just as deserving of my love as anybody else is deserving of my love. And I got your back, and I want what is only good for you, Mark. And I'm really going to practice not throwing you out of my heart. Right? So try that a couple of times before you go to bed tonight and see what happens, see what gets that emotion. I really appreciate everybody's wise comments. Really makes for a rich evening together. What a sweet time it is to spend an hour and a half reflecting on this practice. So wishing everyone well. Shelley Graff and I are leading a day-long retreat next Saturday, the 11th. Please join in if you'd like. And the Buddhist Studies class on Monday evenings, I'll be leading 8 Mondays beginning June 27th. This summer, we're going to be studying the Buddhist teachings on sila, moral integrity, or valuing non-harming, or what he sometimes called the bliss of blamelessness. So join us for that. And Jen Racho and I will be teaching an intro class. If you know anybody who's interested in an introduction to mindful mindfulness, Buddhist mindfulness practice. That's going to be 5 Tuesdays starting on the 11th of July. And of course, a lot of other things coming up. So join in. Feel free to